Everyone, welcome to the wasmCloud community meeting for Wednesday, November 29th. We've got a pretty fun demo to start us off with custom wash build commands and the build only and sign only flags. And then we're going to talk a little bit about this upcoming small milestone called wasmCloud 1.0, and then have a little bit of discussion time to talk about wasm time 15 and any moves there in regards to the stabilization of the WebAssembly component model. So should be a lot of fun stuff. Let me go ahead and get this. Oh, I'm sorry. Somewhere Yordis's eyes are bleeding. Let me get this light thing out of the way. Go straight to the terminal. Okay, here we go. You all should be able to see my terminal. Let me know if you can't. What I wanted to demo today is a new feature that just landed in Wash and should be coming out in Wash 0.25, which is custom build commands and a little bit more manual control over the Wash build process. So for anybody who has worked with any wasmCloud actor, you know the Wash build command essentially drops down to your local language toolchain. And so for a Rust project, for example, we'll run cargo build with a target of WebAssembly with the release profile and all that fun stuff. And then we'll go through and sign your WebAssembly module or component so that at the end of the day, what you get from a wash build is your signed WebAssembly module or component. So this signing process is something that's required in order to run in wasmCloud. Talked about that a little bit more in depth in other community meetings, so I won't go too deep in this call, but basically verified where the WebAssembly is coming from, who's signing it, its identity, its capabilities, things like that. But sometimes that wash build process just isn't quite what we want, right? That whole thing, you notice I only typed wash build. I wasn't able to supply any extra flags to the cargo build. It always goes out to the same place in the build directory. And so one of the things we just worked on was adding some extensions to that. And it's going to be really important. And I'm going to show you why. So I'm actually going to start from like super scratch with cargo component. This is the tooling from the Bytecode Alliance for creating a WebAssembly component in Rust. And I'll do just a new component and I'll call it command component. Hopefully I spelled that right. So this kind of bootstraps like the basic structure of a package that will be a WebAssembly component. And if we look in the main function, we have just a single macro that generates the component bindings. But everything else looks like the very basic Rust hello world. But of course, we're going to compile this to WebAssembly, so we don't have the same notion of just printing to standard out. We use wasmCLI to do that. So I need to reconfigure that. Okay, that wasn't too bad. So building this, you can use the cargo toolchain just out of the box, but you can also do cargo component build in order to actually compile this to the wasm32 WASI target and then embed the component metadata to make it a WebAssembly component. So if we take a look at this component with the wasm tools toolchain, the wasm tools tool, we can look at the component width under target wasm32 WASI debug command component. And you can see all of the imports and exports that this component has, right? This is actually what we call a command component because it has some level of, or some set of imports, but the important thing is that it's not meant to be used like a library. It's like a CLI or like a program on the CLI. It has one export called run. So you run this component, you would call that function called run, and then it exits. So if I do wasm time, wasm component model and like / the command component, we get hello world, right? This is the first example of running WebAssembly that you'll probably ever do in the ecosystem. So it's important not because I want to show you, what it looks like just to create a WebAssembly component. It's important because I think something like this will be the initial experience for people working with wasmCloud. So being able to create a WebAssembly component and then take that from some level of POC and then put it in wasmCloud is important. And I'm going to continue talking about that. Kevin, question.
Yeah, real quick. I'm not sure if I missed it, but did your use of the bindgen generate macro, did it not point at any WIT files?
It doesn't point at any WIT files.
Okay. Yeah,
And
that looked different to me. Normally I'm used to seeing the WIT stuff, but so that's basically the standard for if you want to build a command pattern WASI CLI thing.
as far as I know, building this kind of command component, you don't have to point at a WIT by default. This is the first time I had seen that because I think I'm more used to working with the reactor component. So it's probably someone who could give you a better answer there. But yeah, there's no WIT here, and that's important for the demo. Okay, so I've built a component and I've taken a look at the WIT and I've run it using wasmTime, right? wasmTime is pretty able to call that one run function. But if I wanted to run this in wasmCloud, I need this to be built and signed. Like I need to have the actual component signed so that it can be an actor and I can understand how to interact with that. Now, if you come to this project and you run wash build, the first thing you're going to see is that there's no wasmCloud.toml file, and that's a pretty easily fixable problem. We need to supply some information to this to wash to know how to sign this actual WebAssembly component. So I'll call this the command component, and I'll get rid of this custom Rust thing. I actually just went to the documentation for wasmCloud.toml and copied that over. And this doesn't need a HTTP server claim either. So we put in the wasmCloud.toml, we run wash build, right? Now this is doing another build, which is a little strange. We already built it. And we have this other build command component signed. Great. Let's take a look at the WIT here. You can see that this WIT looks a little bit different and not right. And this isn't just a showcase of how wash build isn't doing exactly the right thing. It's just an example of how wash build right now is not geared towards the cargo component toolchain, for example. There's no WIT to look at. So when wash build attempts to build essentially a WASI preview 1 module and then adapt that to the component model, there's no WIT for it to look at and embed metadata. Now, this is all, I'm pretty sure I'm using all the correct words there, but that's a lot. And the whole process of that, the conclusion is that not all projects are going to be ready for wash build out of the box, especially different languages. So, wash build expects either a Rust or a TinyGo project, but it's not equipped right now to be able to run wash build out of the box with in a JavaScript project, for example. So there are a few things that we added to essentially add much better support for wash build to work in a variety of ways. For what it's worth, it's on our roadmap to use cargo component build to build things. So it will just work, more out of the box. But let's take a look at what those changes are. So I can do a nice little command split thing. Our first problem is that wash is not able to find the correct component to sign. Like it's unable to know that it's the WASI or WASM32 WASI component that it should be signing. So the first thing that we added is the build artifact specifier under actor. And this lets you put a path to the build artifact that comes out of, whatever wash builds. So we'll set this to debug, and then it is command components dot wasm. I think that's right. Right. Yep. Command component dot wasm. So this is going to be able to tell wash like, hey, when we build it, it's going to be located here. The next one is destination. We can say, hey, whenever we build this, we want to output to build command component signed dot wasm, right? These are two of the things that are really important to know where to go. Now, let's assume that, okay, I don't want to have wash manage my build toolchain. I'll just go ahead and deal with doing cargo component build on my own. Great. I've built my component and now it's ready. I just want to sign it. There's this new flag called wash build sign only, where essentially what wash will do is look at the build artifact and the destination and say, hey, I don't need to, I can skip this build command. The user's already kind of dealt with that. And I'm just going to sign it. And when we do that, we can see that the output of that is, hey, we built or we've just signed your artifact. And if we do like a wash inspect, we can take a look at that component and see all of the relevant information from a wasmCloud signing perspective. Now, the other thing that I think is important, because you're not always going to want to manage the build process on your own, or you may want to have this one-step shop or keep iterating, so you don't want to have to keep running cargo component build and then wash build, is the build command. Now, this one is what originally started the reason for this PR, being able to put in a custom build for the actor is really important for things like this, like a different tool chain that we're expecting, but really for any language tool chain that we may not have expected. This essentially allows you to outfit wash build to build that component, sign it, and then put it in the destination you expect. So looking forward at something like JavaScript support, that would be a great thing maybe to show off at the next community meeting, inputting in here the build command of jco component build, and then outputting to a destination that we expect, essentially allows you to run wash build and handle all of that, even though you might be working in a context that we can't design for just as CLI developers. So the final thing that I want to show today is, running this wash build. Actually, if we get rid of the target directory, I can actually prove this generates the component, it generates the bindings, and then outputs it to the build directory, where I think I actually showed earlier that the wit was wrong. So we can take a look at the command component that we have now, and that component width looks a lot better because we built it with cargo component build, and we can inspect the same file and take a look at the wasmCloud specific information. Now that's all great. The last thing that I just want to show is, I got this component built from scratch, like I just did cargo component new on this call. We can go ahead and actually, is wash running in the background? Aha. Hold on. Don't pay attention to that. That was from the last one. We can run wash in the background, and then I can get it to start an actor from the current working directory, build. Was it not there? Oh, okay. Build command component s.wasm. And as long as I got the incantation right, we can check out the inventory of this host, and we can see this component that we just built here is running in wasmCloud. Now, this is actually something that I just asked about in the community Slack. So I've got some extra questions here with regards to calling that run function. I'm actually pretty sure that we can do that. I just didn't give it a try before the call. So here we are. I really wanted to show off this ability to hook into the, kind of override the default of what wash build is expecting, because it's going to enable people to work with a language toolchain that might be up and coming, something that's rapidly in development. And you can actually use wash build, and then from there, standard wash, WADM APIs to run that in wasmCloud and get working from there. So pretty fun stuff. I'd love to level up this demo next week. Would be really cool, just by adding a different language, something that we're kind of not expecting. But this whole idea of cargo component build is effectively sharing some similar things. So fun little demo. Do you all have any questions?
Brooks, does this mean that I could write it to point to some other language that we don't currently know about?
It mostly means that, yes. I actually think that right now we might have a little if check in there to be like, oh, this isn't a language that I expect, but that's dumb, and we should remove that because that's exactly what this is built for. Bailey, I actually think you might have inspired this feature because you were wanting to work with a cargo component built component. So yeah, fun stuff.
Yeah, that was very exciting. That was the day before the talk.
That is right. Hey Bailey, we actually did have a question that I'd like to pick your brain on. Kevin asked something that I thought about and then completely glossed over. I use cargo component new to generate this library. And if I do cargo component new with a reactor component, then I do get a WIT file that just specifies like basically my hello world function. But if I do cargo component new and create a command component, I don't get any WIT. Where's the WIT?
I think right now the assumption is that it is a command CLI, so WASI CLI / command style component. And yeah, exactly. So it just knows about that. You're not allowed to expose anything else. You can kind of think of reactors as like something that gives me a library, but also maybe is like an app. It's like a reactor could be an app, and all libraries are definitely reactors. Whereas a command is something that only has a run function and nothing else. So you don't get WIT because you get nothing else. But also in your package dependencies inside your cargo toml, that's where you would add more things that you want to bring in. If you, for some reason, needed WASI and N stuff and that kind of stuff.
Aha. Okay. So this is kind of how it's all specified and laid out.
Exactly. And then it will use a WIT folder if you add it too. So if you don't like that automatic nature, you can also go fall back to the WIT. You just copy and paste that into it.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, what I really wanted to know if this was totally witless or if it was secret wit.
Well, and I guess where I'm at is every component really should be a reactor, and you should be designing semantic APIs for your components so that they're composable and become fundamental building blocks of an entire ecosystem. So you know what? Make reactors, not commands, please. Thank you.
Whoa, Bailey. Bailey, you just dropped like too many truth bombs at one time. All right, so let me see if I can write that down. So you said that first, everything should be a reactor style.
Maybe don't maybe I'm starting the day off a little spicy. I don't know. Commands are fine, y'all, if you're writing a CLI thing and that's all you're ever gonna do. But you know, I want to build a new component native ecosystem, and components composed with other components are not commands. They're reactors.
Yeah. Okay. Was that the TLDR? Felt like there's a lot more there. It's a lot more spice. I think you just gave it the salt.
I don't know.
Cayenne. It's pepper. All right, I'm gonna go back on replay on that later. I'm gonna hold you on that one. We're gonna find out. You're gonna explain it slowly using smaller words. For me.
Bailey, I can't help but notice that you dropped this very nice little command here. I think I'd like to try that. No. Sad.
I swear it worked at one point. I pulled it out of my history.
Okay.
So that might have changed a little bit, but is supposed to work. Fetch token. We made a breaking API change for the registry piece. Gotta update things, but that's okay. Soon. I'll show that command off again in the Bytecode Alliance community stream.
I think that there's a good world where our tutorials start with generating a component with cargo component. I really like wash new, like generating a new just like the full laid out project and having everything ready to go is great. But there's just something nice about starting from like the standard tooling and then ending with running in wasmCloud. It really is super easy. I was surprised is the wrong word, but I started looking into the stuff for this demo other than the whole wash build stuff this morning, and I was really happy with it. That whole starting from scratch idea is I really like that.
Yeah, and
right.
Peter Hune is behind Cargo Component. He's just so awesome. So if you use it and you enjoy it, you should tell him you like his tool. He deserves all the props.
Hey, Peter Hune, I enjoyed and liked this tool. Thank you so much. All right, before I get on a tangent again, other people have questions. All right. We've got a pretty full community call today. It's really great to see you all. I actually don't think on the live stream, like the Zoom thing, you can see everybody who's in here, cameras off, but we've got 16 people here in the call. It's really great stuff. Okay, let's move on to our next piece. Exposed for looking up the documentation. Next thing on our agenda here is I really want to talk about this upcoming milestone that some things are going to start popping up in the wasmCloud Slack and on the socials, and there's going to be more RFCs. There's going to be more issues getting closed, is looking towards wasmCloud 1.0. So we've been operating as a project for over 4 years now. Some of us have been working on it that whole time, and we brought a lot of people along the way, which is really exciting. And with the recent application on the dark mode to light mode, I don't control this one. The application that we put in for wasmCloud to move to incubating in the CNCF, it feels like a right time to start putting our foot in the ground with stability of our APIs and calling wasmCloud something that's production ready. Now, we had a little bit of we've done a little bit of brainstorming in the past. We've kind of colloquially, like at conferences, been like, what do we need to have a wasmCloud 1.0? And from new features to stabilizing existing APIs to just the process of calling a project 1.0, there's really this is going to be in like always optimistic Brooks voice. There's really not all that much that we need to work on for this. It's just putting our level of confidence in the wasmCloud 1.0. The stability part of it. A key part of that is landing with WASI Preview 2 and the component model, like running wasmCloud with that stable set of WIT definitions and the APIs is a key part of 1.0. We want people to be able to write WebAssembly components, and then just like working with our wasmbus API, not need to recompile their application as they move from dev to production, as they upgrade wasmCloud, unless there's actually a functional change they want to make in their app. So there is, I said there's really not all that much to do. Of course, there's going to be a decent bit of work as we look towards this, and this isn't something where I'm saying that we're going to hit wasmCloud 1.0 by the end of the week. But what I really want to socialize is this board. I had the chat open somewhere, which is just the same project view where we had our high-level roadmap that we published a little bit earlier this year. There's another table, should be the first one, for wasmCloud 1.0, where we're tracking every single issue in the wasmCloud 1.0 milestone. That one, if you wanted to look at just a little bit more of like I don't know if it's a more granular view, if you go to the wasmCloud.org and you click on issues, you can you can click on the milestone here in the top right and find the wasmCloud 1.0 milestone. This isn't a complete thing. We don't have everything that we want to go in 1.0 here. And, it's going to be something where we complete all of the issues here, and then we'll probably need to do, another pass and all of that. But just to outline kind of the high level work that we're looking at, it's making sure that our command line interface for the wasmCloud binary is stable, the wasmCloud control interface, the RPC protocol, and the list of events that we publish as cloud events are stable. It's important for us to look at our observability. So for wasmCloud to be a 1.0 project, it needs to have, we already have OpenTelemetry trace exporting support. I think it's really important for us to look at what we can do from the OpenTelemetry logging and metrics standpoint, because having that trio is going to be really, it's a real great selling point for integrating into like an existing cloud native environment. And, 1.0 isn't the end all be all. This is going to be the first project that I've started on like way early, taking, and then working on something that's 1.0, but it's not the end of the world is the wrong way to say it. It's not like we can't ever add anything, but I want to make sure that we have a really stable base for 1.0 to call it production ready, highlight our production use cases, and then have a good place where we can add things to wasmCloud and support what we already have. So I think that there's going to be really a lot to talk about there over the coming months. So really here, all I wanted to do is socialize that project board. This is a great time if you are a user of wasmCloud and you found something that, either you really like or maybe rubs you the wrong way in the way the API is laid out. Now is a great time to bring that up and let us know. And other than that, we're going to be really working through this off of this roadmap, and there'll be like a developer blog and I'll update the roadmap on wasmcloud.com. I think it's /doc/roadmap. I'll update that for what we're looking at for the end of this year, beginning of next year. Okay, lots of just talking. I'm happy to entertain if anybody has some of that feedback now that they have offhand and want to share as we are looking to take this project to the next level. Please let me know. Go on mute for a second just to let anybody talk.
Yeah, I have one question. And that is we're implementing currently, or we're trying to implement a data processing actor. And one of the things that we use is that's messaging. And in the link definition, we have to give the credentials, right? And sure, we could use a key value store and pick it there, but it's kind of a meta level, right? It's not really the responsibility of the actor to know where the credentials are stored then, right? It could be something that is provided, right, by wasmCloud to have this kind of generally, that's where I store my credentials, and make sure that they're not logged anywhere. Right now they're logged, right? They're put out on the general log. So I wonder how that is planned then for 1.0. If it goes into production, that is one of the crucial things that I think need to be resolved, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, Joshin, I heard the whole question being around, in your specific use case, you have NATS credentials that the actor needs to use. In the generic use case, it really comes down to a whole secrets management strategy. Like the actor needs to have some kind of secret in order to operate. We've had a couple of brainstorms about this. In fact, I think there was an RFC for a basic level of secrets configuration. Taylor, who's not here, unfortunately, just put in a PR for actor configuration or for just general WebAssembly configuration, but that feels more environment variable, not sensitive data. So anyways, looping back, our answer that we've used for what people can do right now for secrets is to use a provider like the HashiCorp Vault implementation in order to store secrets, and then actors can fetch that at runtime. The only thing that the big question or the The only downside of that is that if you need to send the secret over the wire, not just for connection, something that you let's say, for example, you need to pull out like a GitHub secret and then you need to send it over an HTTP request. That secret is going to go over NATs in the wasmCloud lattice, and then normally out on an HTTP request. Nothing you can do there. We need to bring up that RFC again, because I think the idea of doing some kind of tokenization on the link def and then actors being able to fetch based on a token the secret at runtime is really important, and kind of GitHub style censoring that as a sensitive value over the wire is important.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really say anything to further the conversation. It was just kind of a lot of statements, but it's a great point. Now is the time to keep brainstorming about how to do a secrets management strategy, because people are going to need to deal with secrets in wasmCloud applications for almost everything.
Yeah, I wonder if it's possible at all to use it in a real production environment without having that question resolved, right? We can't really expose our NATS credentials in a clear text way or anything, right? So I wonder if that's a requirement for 1.0 to call it then production ready, or if that's just coming later and people cannot just use basically without a login things, right? Providers without having any credentials there.
Right. Yeah. Some answer. We need to have some answer there. Victor, assuming you're responding.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in and note that the problem is it's solvable now, but what we're missing is a really smooth and easy to use sort of interface for that, for this problem, right? Like, so the problem of both reading your secrets from somewhere, right? Like, for example, if you want to make sure your secrets aren't stored anywhere, then you want to use some sort of KMS. But of course, you need to talk to that KMS, and like usually you're going to have some HTTP interface that's helping you do that. And then for messages that are like not putting sensitive details in link definitions, it's something we can't actually stop you from doing. But obviously, rather than putting the secret, you can put a sort of, let's say, a reference to where to get the secret, and that's what we focused on this kind of solution we focused on in the past. So if you have that reference, then what do you do with the reference, right? It's up to the provider and it's up to the actor. And basically right now, it's possible to write something that's as secure as it gets, right? As far as like, making sure information only stays in memory in a certain like specific place. Of course, you have to trust your host, right? Because it has access to your memory. Oh, I see Vance's note there about getting the secret securely, right? Like, yeah, you can get the secret securely, but then you have, like, right now it's just on you to not move it insecurely, right? So like, for example, if you're going to push something over NAS, you need to make sure you never send the secret itself. You need to send a reference to the secret or the secret encrypted. One nice side effect of having public keys and private keys and sort of essentially asymmetric encryption available for basically every actor via identity is that you can actually just encrypt messages via public and private keys. But again, it's like it's possible to solve it in the right way, but we don't have a thing that makes it so easy you don't have to think about it yet. And so I think that's what we're missing right now is like a really consistent way of just doing it. But these problems are all what is it? They're base level problems, right? Like if you're writing an HTTP like server, right? Like if you're not trusting TLS to just protect all your information as it goes across the wire, like if you actually have a sort of more complicated security model than that, then all of these are just fundamental. But I do agree that we need a really good obvious obvious thing to do that makes it hard to do it wrong.
So it's all, as you're talking, Victor, it's all kind of coming back to me here. We've talked about this before, and we've had a couple of really good proposals. And well, before I start on the spiel, Bailey, your call out in the chat that right now our answer for secrets is using the secrets provider like the KV Vault provider to grab and manage secrets is the best way for production use today. So that's our answer right now. Looking forward, we've teased out a couple of things, and we've got the hard things, like where we get stuck when we're working on this is we propose things like storing secrets in NATS Jetstream using an encrypted on disk bucket. And that way we kind of tackle the hard problem, which is wasmCloud hosts and the components on those hosts could be running anywhere. They may not be running in a place that you have direct access to a Vault instance, right? If you're running it out on the edge and you're hosting Vault in your cloud, then it's going to have to traverse the NATS network essentially. And that, I think, sounds really nice for the general use case. The big sticking point there is that people who are putting wasmCloud into their existing environments, they're probably going to have their own secrets store. It may or may not be Vault. AWS Secrets Manager is the one that always comes up as it's pretty common. But you as an enterprise developer I'm not dev-splaining to you. If I was an enterprise developer and I have a secret from, that is important to my enterprise, or maybe it's even customer specific data, or customer personal data, I don't want that stored in some other secrets store, right? It's like a security team's nightmare to have to add on another secrets store. So just storing it in NATS would work pretty well for like the developer use case, but it would be more difficult to integrate into an enterprise environment. We have to deal with secrets. So the RFC, as I remember, is essentially designed to be pluggable, possibly even pluggable over NATS. But that's a lot of work. Coming up with a pluggable interface that feels nice and can be implemented easily by other people is, I mean, we're kind of doing that with WebAssembly and capability providers. It's going to be a lot of work to add on another thing. I personally don't have any concrete proposal right now. I think a lot of smart people in our community have thought about it a little bit. So it's probably worth another RFC for how to handle. At the very least, I know that we don't want to be in the business of storing people's secrets, but we can be better about transmitting people's secrets across the wasmCloud lattice and giving people the good recommendations on how to get them into the wasmCloud app. That's kind of my thought. Joshin or Richter, Victor or Bailey. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you for the comments. I mean, it's probably also having a good documentation about what's the best practice at this very moment is good to have, right? Right now, the messaging that the NATS provider comes with a kind of documentation of put the credentials as the kind of environment in your link definition, right? And that's probably not what, if you're an enterprise developer coming to that and see that, it's kind of, oh no, that's not gonna work for me, and moves on, right? It's just a risk that people see that and it's not best practice and move on, right?
Totally agree.
Yeah, thanks for calling that out. Then that obviously makes a lot of sense, and it's something we should probably just have.
Okay, well, I think I hear anyone else is welcome to chime in. I'll just drop a a note that I hear 2 action items from this. I think one is that we need to dig up that secrets RFC and either reopen it or maybe file a new one just with what we've learned over operating wasmCloud. And then the second one is a more short-term one, which is in our documentation, we should have I know we have a security section, but we should have a mention on how to handle or how to access secrets, and then guidelines for handling them in a proper way in wasmCloud. Victor.
So I was gonna talk about I think the possibility of making sure people can't move the secrets, right, once they've been sort of unsealed, is probably going to be a large concern. And basically, as far as just in general, the state of the art is essentially keeping things only in memory, right, and never, not even like some of the time, not even letting them hit disk, right, if you can avoid it, and like automatic rotation and stuff like that. And that's definitely going to be interesting to talk about, I think. So definitely in the space of an RFC, I think we need to put something in. But anyway, I just wanted to know.
Yeah, +1 to what Victor's saying, and I'll start there. But also, with the caveat that I'm speaking off the cuff, with the actor config that we added recently, there's a possibility that we could move or augment that design to support secrets. The backing store is NATS-KV, which can be restricted. I believe it can also be encrypted over the wire. Maybe, like Victor's saying, we would never even want these to be persisted in any way. I haven't thought deeply about this, but that did come to mind that maybe we could move sensitive config or all config values off of the links and just have the links be the presence of this thing can call this other thing, and then leave config to a store that makes more sense that can be locked down.
Yeah, I'm digesting that one a little bit, Connor, but I think that makes complete sense. All good stuff to consider before 1.0 when we're locked into this forever and you can't change anything. Victor, do you have your hand up for that, or was it from before?
Yeah, sorry, it was from before.
Well, I mean, with it's a great point. With the addition of configuration for components, whether it's an actor component, an actor component feels like a perfect reason to do like kind of static configuration, and then provider configuration can be static too, but sometimes it results in like actually starting resources at runtime. Keeping them away from the link definition could really simplify things. It might even help us rethink the way that link definitions work, as just a way to facilitate communication rather than the runtime config, and the runtime config can be separate. Yeah, Vance.
Yeah, so this subject is one that we're looking at in the TM forum, and so as some of you know, we ran a Catalyst project last year, running another one this year, and what we're really showing that community is that Kubernetes isn't the only thing in the world. There are other ways to do things, and an important part of that is really drawing a line and saying this is part of the what we call stage 3, the specific implementation, and this is part of the application lifecycle management that is separate from that, right? And so in doing that, we're enumerating a list of services that are always needed, and secrets is one of those. And we're not the only ones to do this. I was just trying to find this Microsoft link. I haven't been able to do it, but there. And we're trying to collect these patterns that other people are looking at, and et cetera. So the point is, this isn't a unique problem to this environment, and we should try and do something consistent.
Yeah, Vance, as soon as you dig up some of the stuff that you're doing in the Catalyst or that Microsoft link, that would be great to see. Like you said, we don't have to reinvent the wheel or try to think really hard about everything that we need. People have been doing computing things for a little while.
A little bit.
Don't send me that article about something sufficiently complex being modeled like Erlang, though. I don't want to see that one.
Okay, I won't do that again.
All joking. All joking. Hmm.
I don't want to open all cans of worms here, but I have another thing. Like while developing that data processor, it's a downsampling algorithm, right? That works on streaming data. So we use NATS as our data plane external from the lattice, right? And our processing is stateful. So the way to do that right now is the key value store, but that's highly, for downsampling reasons, right? That's highly inefficient to serialize it out into any key value store and bring it back then again, right? So I wonder what the current discussion is about statefulness in actors. And it's controlled, right? We know where the actor is running, so it's not kind of deployed here or there. It's co-located basically, but needs a specific local cache basically, right? To move along and downsample. So I just ask, what's the current thing? Because that's going to come pretty soon if it goes out into the wild and people do stateful processing. That can of worms. Yes, sorry. So what's the current state? I wonder.
Well, I can chime in a little bit because I wrestled with this, right? And I talked to the group here. I talked to Victor at length, and the state that I thought I needed at the time, I ended up figuring out that really I needed to push it into a provider, and I needed a provider to be really solving that problem for me. Not necessarily a key store provider, but just you decompose the application, and actors are performing some of it, and providers are performing some of it. And for that particular problem, that's where we were. So that was part of that. But the other, we talked a lot. I think we had like an entire meeting in the community call where we talked about whether we should revisit the idea that actors should be entirely stateless. I'm not sure that any conclusion was reached, but there's arguments back and forth. And I guess my point would be that I know I ended up less in favor of making that change because I found I could solve the problem without it.
Yeah, so I do remember that discussion, and I think actually that some things have changed actually since we talked about that I actually I think help a little bit now. But to sort of go back and hit the question from a sort of different angle, I think of it about it like which memory or which resource do you want to hit, right? So if you have a WASM actor that's running on a node somewhere in a host somewhere, there's only so much memory and so many resources you can hit before you hit the network, right? So you've got the memory that's attached to the actual actor. So if your cache is small enough, and again, this depends on the amount of data you want to cache to, but you can actually use a cache inside the actor itself, right? But now this becomes like a sort of distributed cache situation. right? Because so you can use essentially cache inside the WASM module that you're accessing and like is growing essentially. And you can bound that and use it relatively reasonably. So then what's the next closest sort of cache thing, right? So they've got host memory. There's no explicit way to sort of allocate host, like ask for the host to give you a slab of memory, like an extra memory. That's also so multi-memory is a part of the WebAssembly spec as well. So like that's a possibility in the future, but it's not possible yet. So it's just like, okay, so then what's the next piece of memory you can get access to, right? So at that point, you've got the memory like of the host, but that's sort of being, and when I say host, I mean like the node, but that's being channeled by the by wasmCloud, the host, right? So it's, you still have to go through the host to pull that, right? And we don't really have that. What the host can do, like there's possibilities that the host can unlock. We don't have anything that we can tell you right now, like, oh, if you run this command, the host will like give you a memory map page, right? And then all of a sudden you'll be able to access it. And then now you don't have to hit the network, you just have extra cache. We don't have that kind of thing, but it's possible. It's just we don't have it, right? Then you have like disks, right? So one thing that we do have right now is targeting, or I should say targeting, but constraints ability. So you can get a provider and an actor, and someone correct me on this if I'm wrong, to be on the same host, right? By constraining them on and as far as where they run. And that means you can make sure that you never your hop is as short as it gets, right? Is as short as possible. And then you can do something like if you've got NVMe drives under, right? You can write a provider that like uses the NVMe drive for ephemeral storage, right? So that's a much wider pool that you can use for your batching. And that's sort of like, you leave memory land and you go into fast storage land, and then like, different environment. But so basically, let me try and summarize. You've got memory available to you to cache with in the WASM module you're in, right? Like you can just use memory and then you can just keep requesting more until you run out, right? And the host crashes. We could add something that explicit that like sort of requests slabs of memory from either the host, right? What the host has available, or what the machine at large has available. Or you can, and that doesn't exist now, but it's possible. Or you can make sure to co-locate, and it's a little finicky, but make sure that actors and providers are co-located. And when they are co-located, you can write a provider that sort of uses fast disk as a cache, right? And then now you can avoid sort of having it always be a far network call, if that makes sense. So that's kind of how I think about it now.
Wow. I think Victor just demonstrated that this is a deep can of worms. The worms are very lively, there's a lot of good stuff in there. And I guess I want to say I'm not speaking for the project right now, just as somebody who spends a lot of time on the project. And when I think about state, or perhaps relatedly like data processing workloads, it's not just state. Brooks also linked an issue that involves stream processing or long running requests. These are all separate but interrelated features, each of which we could build. But as somebody who does spend a lot of time working on the project, I ask like where the effort should be going, like where do we get the biggest returns? And this is an area that, like I said, is very deep. So it would take a lot of effort, I think, to get right. And Victor and others have described some really cool scenarios that are totally technically possible. But I'm not convinced that that's where wasmCloud should spend its effort right now. And I say that because the second thing I want to say is if you have use cases that like these are deal breakers and must-haves, I would want to hear more about that. Or on the flip side, like Vance said, if you initially thought you wanted this, but found another way to build the applications you were interested in without needing these tricky technical requirements, I'd also love to hear that. There's many different directions that we can point our resources in, but hearing the why behind the requests for technical features, I think, is really important.
I would maybe ask, this I'd like to throw this question back to, is it let me pronounce your name incorrectly so you can please help me. Is it Johan?
Johan, yeah. Good.
That was close, thank you. I would love to throw it back to you and say, what's the least we can do to help you get to prod? And I don't say that because I don't want to do all the other options that were put on the table. I say that because I'd want to get feedback as quickly as we can on how well that works. Is the least I can do is to force my entire team to get on a Zoom call for the next hour and document, what you're looking for here. That's not, I would just take Brooks or somebody. A shorter amount of time would take the whole team. But is that the least that we can do? Would that get you to prod for your particular use case? Would that unblock you?
Sure. I mean, we're running out of time here for the community call today, but that would definitely help. I can explain what the use case is. And we picked that for a POC for wasmCloud, right? We picked that specific data processing problem, which is you need to have stateful, but not a lot of state, right? You're moving along through in basically processing buckets, 2 buckets of time so it's a relatively solvable problem, I think, but it sets some challenges in front of us using wasmCloud, right?
All right, well, let's maybe continue the discussion if you feel more comfortable just doing a DM, or we could set up a private channel. Would you like me to do that on the wasmCloud Slack? And maybe I'll do that for you, and then we can just add people as needed. But I want to get this documented, by the end of the week, or get if the documentation, and then I want to understand what else we need to do by the end of the week so we can try to get that prioritized on our side.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
I'll add you on slack.wasmcloud.com. If anyone's listening later, just visit and you can join right away. It's big.
I'm on the Slack. Yeah.
And
all right, folks. Oh,
since Connor asked, I'll just really quickly say that we discussed, what I brought up, what my problem was pagination of REST. So you've got these requests that are coming in, and they need to keep a cursor and get the next page, right? And you want to page through something, and how do you do that, right? Well, you can't. But in the end, what I really realized is that I need a provider to do that, and that provider should encapsulate that particular capability. So now I can have those stateless actors doing what they do, but having that provider just in charge of that pagination, and it would work with the backend key value store. And that solved my problem, I thought, quite neatly.
I think that sounds like a great avenue in combination too with the streams proposal, like having something that's responsible from pulling from the actual state store and then shuffling it off, through a stream or through paginations or, pages to the actual processing unit, being the actor component. That sounds like it makes a lot of sense. Like Bailey said in the chat, we should totally get our hands on some of the the TM forum example so that we could document that.
Yes, 100%. Victor, and I are having a side channel about the multi-memory stuff. What I actually meant about that is inside WASM time, we had to have support for WASM modules to have multiple memories for us to be able to enable components, because that's actually how components work underneath when you have multiple components in a single component. So that's a feature that we've been building towards for a while. There are other methods too on the store for us to actually share host memory I wanted to throw out there, but anyways, yes, we should take all that to an RFC. I think there's a variety of options to explore.
Hi, folks. Really awesome community meeting today. Great discussion. My demo was fine, but it had spurred some good discussion. It was some cool stuff to see. So I really appreciate you all coming out and engaging in the discussion, or just being here and hanging out and chatting in the side channel. It's really awesome to have you here. Let's keep this stuff rolling in Slack. For anybody watching, if you're not in our Slack, it is open. You can just come by at slack.wasmcloud.com. Everybody on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you all next week.